it's time to do a couple tweaks to the setup, specifically over in this rack right here. I'm gonna move a few pieces of gear around because I'm adding another 500 rack, as well as 4 or 5 new pieces of gear that are gonna be here, which I'm really excited about. But first, I've gotta move a few things around. The mix bus, which is the C1, the 542s, and the SSL Ultraviolet, which are in the Fredenstein rack, are gonna get moved into that 4-space rack and put on top of this rack, and then the reel-to-reel will go above that. In place of this, I'm putting another Trident Decadent 10-space. I've got some goodies in here. Ooh, what is it? And a couple others that are behind me that I'm not gonna show you first. They're gonna go in this rack as well as the 551. So this will all be kind of recording and mixing gear. And then I'll have my mix bus over there easily accessible so I can actually stay more in the center of the speakers in the sweet spot while I'm mixing. The new rack is in. I'm gonna have a space open for a little while. I'm not sure what I'm gonna do there. I have a couple things I might add eventually, but for now it's going to be an open space. I have a new snake for 8 channels of this. Then the last 2 channels are gonna be mic pre's. And then this rack, I still have another, I think 3 channels that I left open in a snake, because I do have some room down here to add some more gear too. I can still expand on this side, but I'm gonna cover a lot of ground with this rack, and I love these Trident Decadents. Built like a tank and no power issues. Looking good. Really excited to check out these high-lows. I'm wanting to use them for a while. Classic 80 BEQ, and of course the good old Rupert Neve gear. This right here, that's a nice rack. And now, it's time to finish this one. Got to move all this stuff up here first, and then I'll get it placed up there, wired up. Mix bus chain is moved over to my left, above the effects rack. It's going to be a lot easier to stay in the sweet spot right here and just reach over there. But that stuff doesn't change that often, so it's mostly set it and forget it. Kind of little tweaks here and there with the 542s, but that's about it. And this rack over here is in. We are done for tonight, ready to mix tomorrow. Now that all that's done, the fun part starts. I have a bunch of mixing coming up, so I'm gonna get to use all this stuff right away, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it all sounds. So go make some music.
Jingle bell, jingle bell rock. Jingle bells chime in jingle bell time. Dancing and prancing in Jingle Bell Square in the frosty air. Gliding in a one-horse sleigh. Oh, giddy up, jingle horse, pick up your feet. Jingle around the clock. Mix and mingle and jingling feet. That's the Jingle Bell Rock. Gliding in a one-horse sleigh. Oh, giddy up, jingle horse, pick up your feet. Jingle around the clock. Mix and mingle and jingling feet. That's the jingle bell. 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 That's the jingle bell rock. Yeah.
Are we cutting? Welcome back. There we are. We're on.
Yay!
Not without our pre-technical issues as always. Well, there's a lot going on here. We have a lot of things happening.
What would be this without troubleshooting and issues? You know, what would it be?
It's a full setup every time. Every time we do it, it's like, okay, there's nothing in here. We got to set it all up. So it's all from scratch. And this time, the damn GoPros an hour ago, both of them, kaputs. Not working. That's all right. We got a different camera up top, so we still have our overhead that should stay on the whole time. How's everybody doing? How was Thanksgiving for those in the U.S.? How was Thanksgiving for those not in the U.S.?
Okay.
What did you do on Thursday?
We got South Wales, New York, USA.
Nice.
Wow.
Nice. This is going to be a good one today, I think. Well, we say that every time because they're always good, right?
Yeah. So you just gotta, stay like improving yourself. It's always good.
I
Good.
wish
Better.
we could get the
good.
camera right there because I feel like when I talk to you, my back is to the camera right there. All right. So last time we've got another song this week, another fun one that we want to break down the mix a little bit and also talk about the arrangement because yesterday we made some changes to the arrangement. We didn't add anything. All this was recorded way before this studio was ever built. So this is mid-2000s. So we were only working with what we had, but we had a little fun with taking some things out of the arrangement that opened up a couple spots. So we want to talk about some of that because that's really important. But one of the big questions last time that I feel like I didn't answer very well was the overall setup here at the studio, how everything interfaces, kind of what the order is, and generally how I make everything work together. So this time, we've got two cool things. One, we have capabilities of getting the actual screen. We got the good old 2009 cheese grater talking to the switch. So we'll be able to show a little bit of that. But I also made a few graphics on the overall setup. So should we just dive in?
Yeah, let's do that.
Any questions out of the gates?
Not really. Just what up, and everything sounds good. So great.
Cool.
All right, so here we go.
So we're gonna start with. He's gonna cut that sucker in. Yeah, go full screen on that, if you would, sir.
Okay, full
And
screen.
then here, I'll cut us in over here.
There you go.
That is camera 3.
Yes, it is. There we go.
Let's go. All right. Ooh, look at that. Fancy. Okay. So this is, we're talking mix setup here of how everything comes back in, but it's very similar to if I was tracking because I always monitor analog when I'm tracking because it's faster, more fun, and I think it sounds better. So it starts with coming out of Logic. We have 64 available outputs from the Motus, 2 24IOs and a pair of 2408s. So when I want something to show up on the console, let's say the kick drum, if I want it to show up on channel 1, all I do is set my output to channel 1. If I want snare on channel 2, I set output to channel 2. I have this part set up so there's as little patching as possible. So it goes Logic, goes to the Motus, everything is in the patch bay. So all of the outputs of the console, all of the ins and the outs of the I/O are all inside the patch bay. It's all half normal, so there's no patching necessary. I set it up very logically, but it's there in case we do need to route something somewhere else, which happens occasionally. Since it's all in the patch bay, we can do that real easily. When it comes out of the patch bay 1-to-1, comes over to the monitor inputs on the console. So in mix mode, like we are right now, I use the fader flip on the channel. It's 2 buttons at the top. Here, can you go in?
You want to go to the other camera?
I don't know if you can change the picture-in-picture that easily, though.
No. Okay.
But yeah, we'll come back to that. But at the top of the console up here is my fader reverse. So I'm directly feeding the monitor inputs, partially because when I track, that way I've got the console split or in line at that point. So it's coming out 1, going in 1, coming out 1. And it comes back up, so a kick on 1, monitor the kick on 1. So when I'm mixing, I just use the fader flip on the top of the console that sends everything down to the faders. I can still use these monitor sections, which we'll get to in a minute. But that allows me to not have to patch anything whatsoever. It's just a fader flip on the top, boom, I can up to all 32 channels right away at my fingertips. That's the basic flow of getting channels out of the DAW and onto the board. You want to go to that second graphic now?
There we go.
So here's where all the different integration can happen. First off is the channel inserts up at the top of the console. That's the obvious, right? Say you got a vocal, you want to put a compressor on it. You know, your bass, you want to put a compressor on it. You know, whatever. That's the first point that I can bring in any of the outboard gear. The second point is the buses. And this isn't necessarily in this order. I just did this to make it a little easier to walk through here. I can step everything over and put anything on these buses. It could just be grouping things together. But for instance, this mix, I'm using 4 stereo buses. I have a stereo drum bus. I have my stereo drum parallel compression. I have stereo guitar parallel saturation. And I have the vocal bus that all the vocals go to, and it has the 5043 on it. That's how I'm using the buses right now. If I was tracking, I commonly take all my kick drums, like to my inside and outside. It'll come over here to one bus. I'll sum it to one channel. I'll use that a lot of the times with the top snare mics as well. But in this case, for mix case, that's where I'm inserting some effects. So on the drum bus, I have the 551, the Rupert Neves. Actually, it's 535. No, what's the order? I got it right here. 551 into the 535s, and then into the Royal Blues. So anything going to this first drum bus, that's the chain. The parallel compression is the Comp 54s. The guitar parallel saturation is the TPS. And I already said the vocal bus is the Rupert Neve 5043, and then a little bit of Trident EQ. All of that gets assigned at the top of the console, which I think most consoles all have it. SSL, Neve, everybody's got the assignments for the buses up at the top, or most anyway. Most of the big boys. That's how that gets assigned. My third option is all the aux sends on the board. This can get used, a lot of the times it's sending to outboard effects, delays, reverbs, which I'm pretty sure today's mix, that's all that is happening from the auxes. Sometimes that'll go to the radial ecstasies with maybe a overdrive pedal or something on it for some drums, and then we can easily feed anything we need really with those accents. You've got 2 stereo and there's 4 monos. That's the next point that I can get in here. After that, a lot of this returns coming back up. It's going to be one of 2 places. The main spot is the effects returns on the board. There's 8 stereo effects returns. Today, that's where all our reverbs that we're using outboard, which happens to be the M3000, TC M3000, the TCD2, and the good old Alesis MIDI verb. They're coming back up here on the stereo returns. There's also some in-the-box effects. I always have stereo 7 and 8, or sorry, it's stereo effects return 7 is always my in-the-box returns. So any effects that may be coming from vocals, or in this case we have guitar, right? We did a little bit of guitar, we have some vocal effects that are coming from inside the box. That's all going to feed out to that stereo bus. That is coming out of Motu output 33 and 34. So my first stereo output past the console, past 32, is always my in-the-box effects send, or returns in this case, coming out to the board. That way it's always right there. So when we're bouncing stems or doing anything, it's really easy. Just, we need to open that, or if we have nothing coming out, I'll just mute it. That way we don't accidentally print anything there. It also allows us to do quick checks if we need to just not hear any effects from inside the box and we just want to hear what it sounded like to make sure maybe levels or something are right, or if we're missing something, or if it's too saucy, we can turn that on and off. Most of the time, channel 8 on the effects return is my drum parallel compression return. That is the one thing since everything went back in that I have not completely got hooked back up yet. So right now I'm just using bus 3 and 4 for that. Now, if we have something that's a little on the noisy side, like say the quad reverbs, of all the units in the rack over here, the quad reverbs are the noisiest. If you saw last week's live stream when we did Jingle Bell Rock, down here on channel 31 and 32, we had the return for the quad reverb. We were only using that on the guitar solo, so this allowed us to mute that before the guitar solo and mute it right after with some automation. And that way we didn't have the excess noise. There's enough analog stuff happening here, a little bit of hiss everywhere. The quad reverbs are kind of like airplane hiss. Or you know those noise generators when you need to sleep? Oh, just turn your quad reverbs on. You'll be sleep like a baby in minutes. So if I'm not using those channels, I would put them somewhere down here at the end of the console and just have fader automation on and off. Prior to the fader automation, I would have it come back somewhere up here, and I would do it just, you know, manually myself. Sometimes I would, you know, do it with the dial. Sometimes I would just literally mute it. If it was in the middle of the song, I would just mute it. If it was at the end of the song, I would actually do a manual fade out just so it sounded natural and you didn't all of a sudden have and a sharp cutoff. But for this case, we're not using the quad reverb today. We don't have any of the noisy effects going, so they're just coming wide open, being fed from the aux sends here. Now, I could also send out from in the box, which we'll get to in a second. So let's go, first off, real quick, cut over to 7. Let's see if we have any questions there before we go to this next stage. Oh, no, here. Let's go back out real fast so you can go. We're going to take a quick break, see if we got any questions from anything so far on the setup.
Question: Where you do the automation? Haha.
Well, we're gonna get to that in just a second. But I can actually show you today because this monitor is hooked up. Anything else?
Yeah. No, I mean, I guess that's so far.
Okay,
yeah.
let's go ahead. Oh, we're double picture in picture. Woo! All right, cut back over to camera trace. I got you.
Okay.
I'm the secondary cameraman today. Okay, wait, camera 3. Yeah, flip over. There we are. Okay, go to the next graphic. We got one more. Okay, so here's the print chain. And this is how everything gets to the computer it's over here that you're actually hearing, or you will hear the audio from. Master fader, the blue fader on the console. I do not have the inserts hooked up. I don't use them. This is a send to go into the master bus that's over to my left. This directly sends to the C1, all of the C1, the Rupert Neve 542, and the SSL Ultraviolet are all hardwired, one to the next. So it goes through that chain, it comes out of that chain to the Apogee, Rosetta 200. The Apogee is hooked up to the print laptop, comes back out of the print laptop once again to the Apogee. Everybody knows how I/O works, hopefully. And that comes back up to the board up here on the master channel. And that is the 2-track return. So all I have to do to hear what's going on over there is simply hit that 2-track, and we are monitoring after all of this is happening. Anything that's in the box, anything that's out in the analog domain, we are now hearing all of that stuff. So that's our monitor. It's the same thing when I'm tracking. The only difference is on the Apogee, you just have to put it in, analog out. And then while we're tracking, I can turn that on, and we're monitoring through the mix bus chain at tracking 2, which makes it sound a bit more exciting. And then it's easy to turn it off. If you simply turn that 2-track return off, we're just hearing what's coming out of the master channel. And that is pretty much, that's the basic ins and outs of this whole setup. It's how we get out of the DAW. It's the spots that I integrate any of the outboard stuff that we have going, and the print chain. So now, let's click over.
Where are we going?
Let's go ahead and show this. Let's show the setup here in Logic.
Okay, so we're going to 3, right?
Camera 2.
2.
Yep, and you can turn the PIP off. So take it off air. There we go. Okay, so now, these first 32 channels, you can see starting here with the kick, and going down here to the guitar effects print return, which this was from my setup from last week. I just imported in here. We're not actually using that this week. So it is not that. There is nothing actually there. But those 32 channels, which are right here, this is what is talking to the console. So this is where all the automation happens. You can see there's a little on the kick, some on the toms, the bass, guitars. We have less automation this week, actually. The piano's getting a tiny bit of automation. But this is the setup that is exactly what's out here on the console. Actually, turn the picture-in-picture back on. I think there's room up there in the top. If you would, sir. Ah, there we go. Sweet. Excellent. So you can see that it's a mirror image, basically, of what's in Logic. So those are aux sends. They are set to no output, each of these channels. So that way, if I change those fader settings, well, here, this needs to make sense. Let's go over here real quick. Right here, we have the kick. These two channels, you can see it's going to bus 33. It's only bus 33 because I didn't start this session from scratch. Usually that would be bus 1. But this time I decided to leave some stuff on from the last session to see if I liked it. It made my life a living hell. Both of us yesterday trying to go through this stuff. So usually bus 33 would be bus 1. But in this case, Logic has auxes and banks of 32. So I'm starting at the beginning of the second bank. But 33 is actually over here. That is bus 1. So that is set to no output. I'm doing the send out to the board up here on the sends. So this now sends to output 1. So that's what shows up on the board. The reason I do it that way is I don't want this fader right here to affect the level of what is coming out to the console. So all of these send outputs are pre-fader. So whatever volume is happening right here on the kicks, that is what is being sent out this send right here. This fader is only affecting anything that's happening post-outboard processing. That's all that's happening. And that way, even if I pulled this fader all the way down, the output of that kick is sending full on to that output. For instance, last week on the room mics, we had some automation on the room crushes with the dynamites. I didn't have it set up this way initially because it was technically only the second time working this way, so we hadn't figured it out completely. So when I would pull those room mics down a little bit, it wasn't pushing into the dynamites as much, and all of a sudden the excitement was gone. So now with the way it's set up, it's the room crush mics, they send, here I'll just show you, right here, here's my room crushes, boom. That goes to right, I didn't color code everything. Here's room crush, there's the output, see it's set to no output. So now these faders right here that are up on the console only affect anything after the processing. These two outputs going to 11 and 12 are pre-fader. So that way, if I pull those faders way down, the compression that's happening on the dynamites is not affected. The faders on the board, which are these faders right here in Logic, are only affecting post-dynamite volume. That way, the sound stays consistent. Sometimes little changes aren't a big deal, but in this case, with they're being hit pretty hard, it would be a huge deal. Or the vocals, it would be a huge deal with the way they're getting printed. So that's how that Logic and the board are connected together right now.
Yeah, John is asking, do you consider this a typical hybrid setup as far as routing goes, or is it very specific to your preferences?
I'm gonna have to roll with specific.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's typical is the separate print system. I think that's
happens
typical.
a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, in terms of how you're routing, ins and outs, to say, yeah, this is very specific because of the hardware we have.
Right.
Yeah.
Because your setup at home is a little different.
Yeah.
You use the I/O plugin,
Yes.
if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, mostly, but I do also print through when I don't care about latency, like out of the interface and then back into the interface. So without going, I/O plugin.
So if you're doing anything that's inside a session, your hookup is in your patch bay. It's just you select whatever ins and outs that gear's on, and then it's I/O plugin.
Yeah.
If you're mastering or something, you might
Yeah.
be printing the other way.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, that makes sense. So yeah, so this, I think most people's setups will at some point become specific to their setups. I mean, we all share a little bit. I think I'm in between, or probably, well, as far as how the automation works, I'm probably fairly unique because this automation is hooking up via Huey. Whereas if it was old SSL or Neve, you know, if you've ever seen the Bob Clearmountain videos or even the Breesy or any of those guys, they have the old SSLs. They're still using the old computers and the floppies. So that system is different a little. I'm running everything back into one session with the prints happening on a different one. So yeah, it's probably, I'm going to err on the side of this is specific to my setup.
Yeah, here's Miggy. He says, well, I'm trying to figure some things out because he has the GL 2400, which I think is that's an Allen Heath.
That's
right?
Allen Heath, yeah.
So he says, do you print each stem without the direct outs, or do you mix and then print one final print of your left and right output of console?
Oh, at the mix, it's one final print. That's it. I don't print any of the separate ones back in. Once the mix is done, I do print all my stems to the print laptop, which these computers are synced via MIDI time code, so everything is in line. So when I can literally just arm the other computer, and whenever I hit play right here on this computer, it automatically starts recording and everything is synced together. So when the mix is done, you'll have whatever your main mix is. There'll always be an instrumental. Depending on who it is, yeah, you could probably flip over to 7 for a second.
Oops.
Kill the P&P. We'll come back to the
There's the
in
console.
box. Yeah, it's a good shot today. Kill the P&P for a sec. So you'll have your main mix. There'll be the instrumental mix. There'll be a stereo stem of drums, usually with whatever effects are on it printed, unless it's some crazy delay or extra things that I did. Then I'll print the drum effects separately, and then you can just combine it back together if you have to do a stem mix. The bass would be a stereo stem. Rhythm guitars would be a stereo stem. Beyond that, guitars would depend on what's there, and it might be 1, 2, 3, or 4 more stereo stems. The lead I always print wet and dry. I don't know why I do that. Not one time have I had to go back to the dry vocal.
Yeah.
But I think I do it just in case we wanted to change a volume or effect on something for a specific reason. I do it that way. So I'll actually print a wet vocal, I'll print a dry vocal, and I'll print the vocal effects. Background vocals, I print, just double checking, almost all the time. I would say 99% of the time I print with whatever effects are on it.
Yeah.
And so it could be 8, 10, 12 stems ultimately at the end. So far, that has always been enough for me. Occasionally, I've gone back to do a stem mix. Usually what gets changed there is a volume between, the guitars need to be louder on the chorus, or the vocal needs to be louder on the bridge, just a little bit. I'll pull the stem mix up. Oh, I should preface this with, when I print those stems, not the mix, the stems, I turn the master bus off. So the C1, the 542s, and the ultraviolet get turned off. That way, if I have to recall for a stem mix, all I do is I pull it up on a stereo channel, I send it back through that chain I recall that setting, and then I'll have the actual mix coming back out on another set of channels. I'll just A/B it for a minute to make sure that I have it right. Sometimes there's a little massaging that you have to do from the stem mix, and I get it close again, and then I go, okay, now I go vocals up on the bridge, or guitars up on, whatever. And then I reprint that. I almost never reprint stems at that point, unless it's a fairly big change. 98.5% of the time, that's been enough. Occasionally, like I'd say another 1% of that is, okay, I pull one of the dry tones from the session back into the stem mix. I need to reinforce something, or that wasn't quite right. Okay, I'll pull that back in and I'll just redo that track to the stems. Then occasionally you do a full recall. It happens. And so I need to do a video actually on that, how I video all of this stuff, because I now have the process very dialed in, so it's not actually that big of a deal to do a full recall. So that's how I do the stems at the end of it. But I don't do individual, like kick, snare, because that's not the sound. It would never... I haven't figured out the best way to do it for here on this setup. And 2, it would be a completely and utterly different sound, unless I was printing in while I was mixing and then sending that back out. That happens sometimes when I have the ecstasies over here and I'm using the OD glove or any of the other effects on drums. Say I'm printing kicks and snares, or maybe I'll print the rooms through it, or maybe there's an extra bass tone or vocal delays or something like that through the pedals, and I want to reuse them. That stuff I'll print in, and then usually that would come out, I would have a stereo track, either a fader, or that's when, well, this is the next part of the setup presentation, I would open up one of the monitor return stereo groups, and I would just open that wide open. And that would be just for any extra stuff that was in the box that didn't need to be on a fader. So I do print that stuff, kicks, snares through effects, toms through guitar plugins, vocals through guitar plugins if it's not staying, and then I can automate that stuff on and off, which happens not on these mixes at all, but on normal, especially rock stuff, I do that all the freaking time. And that way I can reuse those channels, and then I can pick and choose when that stuff's gonna come on and off.
Yeah.
If
So you use actual guitar pedals, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I have the 3 stereo channels of the Ecstasy.
Yeah.
Last week we used a guitar pedal actually on a guitar,
Yeah.
which for me is
Yeah,
weird.
yeah. So he's
His
using like
vocals.
Boss and all the typical guitar
Yeah.
pedals. They're in
all
the mix chain,
Yeah.
or the printing chain even.
Yeah, there I would usually print, if I was in
Yeah.
the mix, 9 out of 10 times I print those back in. I get it, oh, I like that, print it in, make sure that's lined back up correctly, and then it comes out of channel, and then automate something on or off. Maybe you just want the crunch to happen on the pre-chorus for something different, so I'd kill it everywhere else. And then you can further process it and have a little bit of fun with it there too. So
Yeah, and here's the other question they had is, do you use the console monitor mix for headphones, or do you use your interfaces?
console, all the monitoring happens off the Trident for us. So we can have 3 sets of monitors hooked up, which at the moment we only have 1. Well, I actually have 2. I have these little cheap Amazon ones that are great. And then our headphone mixes, like right now for Ernesto and I, there's 3 headphone ports on the board. There's one mini 8th jack on the top, then down underneath the bolster that you can't see here, there's a 1/4 inch jack and an 1/8 inch jack there as well. That's where Ernesto and I are listening to everything today, and that's the headphone mix here. So the interfaces really for us here are pretty much just in and out to get things back out to the board or into the DAW. We don't use them for any other monitoring.
Kind of like the Digis, right, for Pro Tools HD.
Yeah.
much.
It's kind of that kind of setup.
Yeah.
Or some of you that may be using, the Persona stuff, like the Quantum, it's just ins and outs. Or maybe you have a Mackie Big Knob or some other, the Dangerous monitoring system or something like that. The console here sounds nice and clean, and it works well for us, and it's just one less thing to have set up, so I just tend to use it, and I like it quite well. Any other questions?
Oh
or
yeah.
wanna go back?
Do you use the insert for compressors, etc.? Let's say recording, does a preamp go into your insert like a compressor would?
Okay, good question. Yes, the inserts, compressors, compressor and EQ is usually what I use the most. Sometimes if it's guitar pedals, I'll put those on an insert, and occasionally I have run a reverb on the insert of a room mic, the room mics, because it reacts completely differently, and you can get some really fun things happening that way. But let's say it's, let's just fly with drums, because that's the most stuff, right? The snare drum's coming in, you want a little bit of compression. Yeah, I always do that on the insert. Then I can use the input gain knob on the top of the console to set my level going into that. So I can kind of leave the compressor setting where I know they sound pretty good. And then the fader is what obviously sends back out to print into Logic or Pro Tools or whatever we have to be working in that day, which usually is Logic, but occasionally it's Pro Tools. Did that answer that question?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah,
Sometimes it's an EQ. I mean, the cool thing with the insert is I could do a compressor and EQ. It could be a Rupert Neve channel, right? We could EQ a little bit, then compress it. And then on the board, when you turn the insert on, I have a switch that is pre and post, to make the insert pre and post EQ on the board. So I could then do even more EQ with the Trident. Or I could also, if maybe I'm not using an outboard EQ, say it's an outboard compressor on the kick, I could decide to have that before or after the Trident EQ to see which way sounds better. That's happening today with, before I say that, yeah. So the vocal, and this is the same last week, I have a whole outboard chain on the vocal with a Cush Clairphonic going into IGS 2 core into the Day King over here, comes back up here on the board, and it is post insert or post EQ here, and doing a little bit more. I'm pulling a little bit of low end, sending to that whole channel from the Trident, because Brian's got a thick voice and it didn't need the low mid so much.
Yeah. You want to show that?
Yeah,
Here.
that's a good idea. Forgot we have that. Yeah, so that's all right here. So you can see this is the vocal channel. So this is the insert for the vocal. You can see it's on. Right below that, right here, there's another button for pre or post EQ insert. So you can flip. You can kind of have a chain and flip to see which is better, EQ before, EQ after. And once I kind of know how I like that, I might set my outboard up with the EQ and a compressor and have it set up so I have a final EQ here, or have this EQ first going out to that, which is the case with the vocals. And then it hits the rest of the chain and then comes back to the board. So there's still a fair amount of flexibility right off the top of the console. But it'll be usually EQ or compression, tracking and mixing. Although I will say, since I've gone to 16 channels and input transformers, I haven't done as much compression on some of the channels that I would, or even compression just for color. I'll just hit the channels a little bit harder and it sounded really nice. So, we got anything real quick, or should we go back in the box real quick and go through
Yeah,
the setup?
so Mickey, who asked all that, it's like, I'm literally wiring my studio as we speak because I just got a TRS snake, so this is epic timing and greatly appreciated. Much respect, guys.
Nice.
Epic timing. I love that. I love that.
All right, let's finish. I want to finish going through how the in-the-box stuff is set up, because there are a few things that I like to show. So
Okay,
let's go
so
back to
to
camera spy and turn the P&P back on.
Okay.
There we are. There we are. Okay. So we went over the first 32 channels of the session, which you can see are color-coded. Down here, the first 8 are red, green, blue, and then another shade of blue. Those represent the 8 banks of the console. The second bank, you can see there's another layer of white underneath there. That is this guy, the Behringer. So that way it's easy, and it's same in this window. You can see it over here on the left. I know what's what. This makes it easier to know. And then in Logic, we have everything cleaned up here post-board. So here's all the different sections. We've got drums, we've got our percussion, we've got bass, guitars, keys, the vocals I didn't put in groups. So let's go, actually, let's work with the vocals, because that's the one spot where there's a fair amount of outside the box and inside the box. So background vocals are a typical place for me to do inside the box, summing, mixing, that sort of thing, and have it come out on stereo groups out here. In this case, for this song, and it was the same last week, that's 23 and 24. And for me, the console, 21, 22, 23, 24 are always vocals for me. 21 and 22 are related to the lead vocal, 23, 24 related to background vocals, grouping everything inside the box. Usually I leave 20 open for something else with the lead if I need it, and 25, 26 would be my next channel if I needed it. In this case, I didn't, so I put the organ on 25, 26. But you can see here's all of, these are all the background vocals. And I've done a little more mixing inside the box, where I have those going to 3 different buses right here. So this first group here, you can see is all feeding, wait, one more, 15, which is this bus right here. Then we have this group that's feeding bus 5, which is this bus right here. And we have this, this group is also feeding bus 5 right here. And then there was some bus 20 somewhere. I'm sending somebody to bus 20. Those are the hops. Oh, there they are right here. These first 2 right here are the hops, which you'll hear in a second, are going to this bus. Those 3 buses go back over here. They get sent out, my outs, which right here are the background vocals, 23 and 24. You can't see on the board, these 2 buttons lit up right here. Now, you notice that I'm not sending it to a left and right here. I have bus 23 set as a stereo input, and it's sending to this is going post fader actually. That should be pre, that's my mistake. That's going the output right here, bus 23, 24. Now for Logic, or for the board, if we were doing any automation, and we don't actually have any on the backgrounds here, most of it was evened out and we liked where it was. These two channels correspond to 2324, but I'm only sending to bus 23, which is a stereo output, so it comes up on 2324 of the board. So in this case, the faders here only control faders here, but 23 is actually a stereo output setting. But we're doing all of the pre-mixing of the background vocals in the box for this one. There is a little bit of, they're going through the overstayer compressor just for a little bit of extra on the output, but all of our mixing this time was in the box on these outboard vocals, or background vocals. There are some effects you can see up here in the buses. That comes down here. These are all our different effects. The ones that are muted we did not use. They were from the mix many, many moons ago. On this one, we left them in here because we wanted to try them out and see if we liked them or not. We didn't. We made some alterations to these guys right here. As you can see, I labeled that one great. It's called Aux 17. Makes total sense. These are the ones we are using. You can see they're going out they're going out outputs 33, 34, which shows up back here on the effects return 7 on the console. So any of the effects in the box, all are coming up there. There's also a guitar send going to there. So this time, background vocals completely mixed inside the box, coming up on a stereo group out here on the board. Not actually doing any additional automation here because it was all done inside. The lead vocal on Brian this time, it's 2 channels. And he's coming over here to lead vocals right here. Now that's going out 21. I'm also sending a little bit over to bus 10 on the output there, which we go back over here. Bus 10 is this short, really short delay. And I'm using this more as a thickener, even though I have the feedback on a little bit. It's just for a little extra space around the vocals. The vocal outside the box also going to the D2 on a 110 millisecond slapback delay. And that's actually kind of what you'll hear the tail of. This delay from inside the box is more of a, I was going to use the word space delay, but to some people that means something very different, especially if you have any rolling gear. But it's more of a spatial kind of thing just to open up the space just a little bit. And I'm doing that actually on the aux send that's going out to the board because I wanted it at the final stage right before it hits the board. That's where I wanted it to happen. So it's post any automation we may be doing right here, which is usually this automation on the actual channels is evening automation to make things easier for the outboard. I'm not trying to do so much makeup of volume with compressors or whatnot. More for color, more for attitude a little bit, and then maybe a little bit of glue to keep things kind of together. So the automation that happens actually on the channel is to even things out the way we want them to go out to the board. And then once we get that done, usually we'll group everything together like here we did with the drums. We can close it up, keeps the session neat and tidy. Any questions where we're at, or are you answering them?
Yeah, I mean, he said that he got the console for 2 on the box, so he's
Holy
like,
crap.
yeah, so he's super amped, you know, and I said like, yeah, wiring everything is fun if you just like to solder, you know. And then Sean says, then you realize you spent more on cable than you did in gear.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh my Lord, that's the hidden expense is cables, man. It's insane, even if you plan for it. So any questions, or I'm gonna go to the next thing?
No. Let's continue.
Okay, there's a couple things I want to go in this one that are new. Let's go to the drums specifically. Let me open these guys up. Okay, here's all our drums. One of the sales that was on this last week, I think it might still be going, was Sonics. And this has been on my list for a while. Was this guy, the Leveler. And this is the first time using it, and I'm really using it more for the leveler side of things because there's a few mixes coming up starting next weekend that I know this is going to get some heavy use on. Because a lot of the times I would go do automation to kind of get things right. Then it might be some saturation and or compression to try to do some of this. This plugin is fan-freaking-tastic. I mean, even though I have it pretty much off, not using the gate part of it, it is awesome. It works really well. But the leveler side of things, this is fantastic. I mean, it's just, as long as your sounds are fairly consistent, or tonally, you almost don't need samples or anything with this. It's amazing. There's some voodoo in this plugin. So I have that going on the snare, as well as this was recorded a long time ago. So I am using a couple samples. One of the one of them is from a pack that I just put up this morning. There are 2 new sample packs on the Ultimate Studios Inc. store. Linked is in the description of this video, or should be. If not, I'll put it in right after this. I'm actually using one of those and tuning down a little bit, and then I'm using a second one just for a little snap. We'll play all that in a minute. But the drums are all going kicks, going to channel 1, snare to channel 2, overheads to 3, 4. All the toms, I have 3 on this, are getting grouped to 5 and 6 on the board. So that goes out bus 37. It goes over here, and here are the toms. You can see we do have some automation going on. That's coming from the console. Post-processing. And then the same thing over here on the rooms. There's these set of rooms also that are muted on the board. I was actually using them as a throw to a reverb. We decided it didn't make anything better, so they're muted on the console. They're not getting used. We're only using the ones that are getting crushed to the dynamites. And they just really stay on for some space. So that's the drum. We'll do a full listen in just a second. We do have a little bit of percussion in this one. Cowbell. There's even a cowbell fill. I'm not going to point out where it is. I want to see if you guys hear it. Here I'm using a little bit of my favorite, the tiltration, the saturation on there, as well as a little bit of just Logic compression. I find this stuff does a great job, especially for ancillary sounds like percussion. Bass, we doing anything? No, nothing happened to the bass. It's all happening outside the box. Guitars. Actually, those aren't getting sent out. Those are muted coming out. Oh, no, that only happens. We'll show you that. So this setup, guitars. You know what? Let's do a listen, because now we're in arrangement land.
Miggy just gave us a super chat.
Dude, thank you. You rock. We appreciate it.
Yeah,
the support.
right on.
It's a lot of work doing these. It helps a lot. We're getting into arrangement talk, which I want to go over. So I think it's time let's just take a listen. We've had a lot of talking. We've gone through the setup. Real quick, are there any setup last minute questions? Not that I won't answer them later, but if there's anything right now that we can answer. Otherwise, we're going to take a listen to things.
All right.
I forget there's a delay, so I got to wait for them to answer. Let's go ahead and go back. Cut over to... Let's do this. Let me open up our drums. We'll stay on there for a second.
Okay.
I'll open up the bass channel. I'll open up the keys. The vocals already open. What am I missing? Guitars right here. So you're going to see a lot of stuff turned on and off here with the guitars. You'll also see the same thing down here with the keys. There are 2 different organs happening. We have a main organ that's mostly pad stuff. There's a solo organ kind of thing that happens in the breakdown. Matter of fact, let me make this a bit more obvious. We can pull that over. You see that right there. The main organ is MIDI. There's also a MIDI piano. These were actually performances from a friend of ours, Gary Pritchard, who's a fantastic piano player, organ player, keyboard player, teaches down at Fullerton School of Music. He's awesome. This was done way back in the day. He'd done it MIDI and sent it to us. And then we did a separate one later when we added some organ solo. Or he might have sent those files to us too as audio. So you can see that there. This is guitar solo. That's going to be fun. I'm going to save that for when we get there. Actually, this one isn't happening, so I'll just turn that off for now. And then you'll see there's a fair amount of things turned off in the guitars. We'll explain that all as we get there. So let me zoom out so you can kind of see stuff. Ernesto and I are going to try not to talk while this is going on. Right here, let me go more. Oh, that's all I can go. All right, I'll scroll up and down. So there's the drums. Okay, we're at bar 4. We should be good.
Here, another question from Maggie. When you get sent songs like that, do you only get sent MIDI and you find the sound for it? I mean, in this case, it's just a track, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In this case, when we did it, yeah, that was the easiest thing to do because he did all this at home. And he was also, if I remember correctly, a Logic user. So he just sent us stuff straight out of Logic and we just opened it up. If I was getting something from an artist to mix, I would probably say it's going to get printed audio, especially if it's a sound that they have. Maybe they're using some contact stuff or they have something they're like, that's the sound. I don't want the MIDI in that case. I'll have them printed as audio and just send me the audio file. If they don't have the sounds that are good or hey, this is just a guide, let's experiment in the mix, I would have them send MIDI. But I would say the vast majority, like 99.9% of the time, if that's what the sound the artist likes, print it as audio, send me the audio, don't send me the MIDI. That's the way I would go. So, all right, let's take a listen to this. I don't think... All right, you ready?
All right, where are we going? Which, oh.
You can just stay there.
Okay, staying there, cool.
Oh, hold on, wait, we've got to drop again. Still figuring some bugs out. Let me hear. Go back over to 7 real quick. So we'll just
to 7
and kill that P. Yeah, there we go. I gotta do a quick restart here of El Logique. I knew when the Behringer was like, no, I'm not gonna work. So we got that, cool. So we did Wednesday night, the night before Thanksgiving, we just did a huge reinstall. We literally wiped this computer because there were some things that were happening that we were not, over the years that some things we couldn't figure out and they were causing problems. So we literally did a complete fresh install of this machine Wednesday and are just getting everything kind of put back on. So I still have some stuff that's not completely set up. And I'm seeing one of those issues right now. And of course, a live stream is a great time to learn of these things.
Of course.
No fear, man. No fear. It's only music. No one's going to die. I mean, as much as I yell at the computer sometime, I might be wrong with that. So, all right, here we go. Let's take a listen.
Yeah, man. Mine's going out.
I got to turn the vocals on. Where's my lead? What do I have off? I have something off right now. On. That's on. Brian, where'd he go? Brian's the cool part of the whole song. Well, that and the guitar solo. Let me just double check Bri real quick.
Rocking around.
There we go. There we go. Okay, bar 4.
Yeah, man. Mine's going out. Rocking. Rocking. Rocking around the Christmas tree at the Christmas party hop. Mistletoe hung where
No button. No button.
Yes.
No drinks. Can't do it.
Yeah.
See if anybody gets that reference.
Oh yeah.
Free hot dogs for life. No drinks.
I can't do it. I can't do it.
Okay, so there's the tune. This is a fun one as well. Brian Hacksaw Williams on vocals. Our good buddy Min Overbotton on bass. Aubrey Buchanan, Nicole Carson on the background vocals. Of course, me on drums. And Holmes over here on guitar. So one of my favorite spots of this whole tune. And this, okay, I'd like to focus a little on some of the arranging ideas, because that is when the mix for us, when we were working on this yesterday, really started to change compared to where it was many years ago. When it went to the guitar solo, we had cut the rhythms out and went old school, like 3-piece, centered guitar solo. But for whatever reason, and neither one of us can remember this, he doubled them. When he played the rhythms, he played it twice. So we decided to leave the guitar solo.
Hey, come on!
We decided to leave it stereo because it was cool.
Yeah.
Just hearing it there, and there's no effects on the guitars at all. There's no reverb, there's no delay,
Yeah.
There's nothing on the rhythm guitars or the solo.
Yeah.
So we thought it was a kind of a cool effect that it all stays wide with the guitars, and then it doesn't change again kind of when it comes back in, until it comes back in at the bridge with the vocal back in the middle. So the vocal leaves the middle, but things stay out, stays this way, gets some of the guitar solo, then the vocals come back in, and we have something in, forward in the center besides the snare. That's one of my favorite parts. It's just the stereo guitar, stereo solo, and bone freaking dry. Do you remember at all why we did it why you tracked it that way?
I have no idea.
I don't either.
I have no idea.
But that was kind of a fun discovery yesterday, is taking it out of the center and just leaving it wide, not doing the traditional delay kind of thing. Just let it sit over the top, leaving things open for whimsy. Now, the two big places, and we'll solo some stuff up too here in a second, just to hear what's going on. But we made two big arrangement changes with the guitars. Probably hearing Delilah back over there. First off at the top. Initially, there's two tracks going on here. This is left, and this is right. These third tracks in here we were trying a room mic out at the time, like a ambient mic, and this is in the old studio. We did not have the placement in a good spot. So I didn't delete them, didn't want to get rid of them. We actually used those over here on the bridge, which we'll get to in a second, but we've turned them off for this entire song. So really these two, I got to get over to, hold on. Now you guys can see it. So here's our two channels. This is left. This is right. This third track on both of these was an ambient mic, not using, except for on the bridge only. It's off the rest of the time. So we had both of these guitars at the intro, initially coming on stereo guitars. But it felt like it's like right away, it's like wide. There was no impact when the verse actually came in. So we turned the right guitar off entirely. We are sending, let me pull that up over here, one of the channels of this left guitar to a delay reverb setup that we have panned right. So you'll hear that on the right side, just so we get a sense of some space. Just a little bit of fun there. We have the drums. Let me turn the automation on so we can see the other things that we did here. You can see the kick right here. This is now, I'm on the tracks that correspond with the console, so we're looking at console automation at the moment. The kick, we've pulled down a little bit. The toms, I've brought down just a hair. The bass, these two channels here, the bass is also down a hair, as are the rhythm guitars, which in this case, is really only the rhythm guitar on the left. And we did that to leave a little bit of room so when the verse kicks in, it doesn't feel like it gets smaller because there's so much low end from the toms, and Minnow's playing that really strong bass line that when everything was at even volume, the verse was a little disappointing when it was coming in. So notice this time, it's down just a little. Open. So the big hit is those guitars, and you can see that automation right here. And it's only a dB, not even quite a dB, but it's enough to where it, boom, it pulls us in, you got the drum fill, and we're kind of off and rolling. So that's what we did to kind of give see all the old automation that we turned off and I didn't clean up. I don't recommend working that way, by the way. Let's go back down here to the guitars. It makes things... I didn't on Jingle Bell Rock. I deleted all of it and started fresh, and I didn't this time. So that's the intro. The next spot, feel free to chime in here because this was a lot, turning off was a lot your idea.
Yeah. A guitar player telling, hey, turn my guitar off because I don't need it, right? That's rare. That's rare.
And he lets me fuck with his tone. So this... We actually turned, you can see this whole breakdown. Let me just play it one time so we all know where we're at, and then we'll talk it through, because we turned a lot of stuff off.
So Holly, yeah, we been rocking around, rocking around, rocking.
Hi, Delilah. Do you like that arrangement? Excellent. Okay, so just for reference, I'm going to turn these on. Just so you can hear what it was. And the original, when we recorded it in the original mix, as you can see, I have some fade in, fade out stuff here. But this is what it was, or something similar to this initially.
Yeah.
I forgot to turn the last one on there.
Nice tail.
We had a little fun on the bridge with delays.
Yeah.
So do you want to kind of...
Sure, yeah. The main reason I decided, because it was my idea, it's like, there was a lot of stuff going on with the organ, the piano, doing all these licks. Then we had the Q&A, so Brian, the singer, saying something and the girls answering and all that. It was like, and then I'm just going, all that guitar stuff above it. And we're like, man, I'm not letting these other, arrangements shine through. So I'm just blocking all that. So let's just kill it and then just come in back on the big A chord and then that's it. Full-blown outro.
Because, this way, you can hear, one, is anybody hearing my cowbell fill? Come on. It technically is the best thing in this song. I'm really disappointed that the comment section is not blowing up about the more cowbell, okay? Just saying. Now that we've covered that. I'm sure it's going to be on fire now. There, you've got the percussion, you have the organ fill, there's the piano fill that's in there, and then there's all the vocals. So let me, just for sake, I'm going to turn off. Let me go to... Close this up real quick so I can see it. Brian, mute. Let's just hear this without the vocals. Oh, I'll go back a little. Dude, Gary's organ, that is awesome. Okay, so we did a couple things with this organ down here. This is that main kind of gritty fill that's going on. I'm using one of my favorite Logic pedal plugins, the Grit, just to add a little, attitude to it. And we split it on 2 channels. There's a call and response. This first one, this left channel right here, is full. Then the response. And you can see there's some automation. It's lower in volume. It's the same sound. It's panned to the opposite side. But there's a vocal that happens over that. So we did that. Then the second time the riff comes around. So that ends the organ fills right there. Here's how we built it back in with the guitars. So halfway through, you're going to hear these 2 guys come in right here. We've seen both of those. Yeah, those 2. I used the room mics that weren't in great phase with the close mics, but just so they're sonically, like texturally different. After the organs, we come back in with one of these on the left, one of these on the right, but they're way back. They've got some reverb on them. Then you're going to hear the main rhythm guitar come back in full, and then once again on the chord, bam, the stereo guitar is going to hit. So it kind of steps down to no guitars, and then we use guitars with some panning to bring the thing back in. And I think both of us found it way more interesting that way. And it leaves room for us bring arguably the most important thing back in, the vocals.
Yeah, we've been rocking around, rocking around, rocking around, yeah, rocking around the crib.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And now there's some, it's not a very long breakdown, but there's some movement in it. It's a bit more interesting, at least to us.
Yeah. And there's space.
That's the big one. That's a t-shirt. Just simply space and not outer space.
Yeah.
I think it's the single most overlooked and least used arranging / mixing tool, concept, trick, whatever you want to call it. And that is space. And not being afraid to have some space. The tendency is, and we even did it here. I mean, we had guitars the whole time.
Yeah.
There's organs, there's piano, there's like, there's vocals, there's background vocals, there's all this stuff going on. And yeah, you want everything in there, but it wasn't cool when you couldn't focus on it. It had no purpose. It had no sense of movement. And using space and taking things away, or use the mute button. The mute button is magic. Or in this case, we did mute region.
Yeah.
You know, use that as to your advantage and take things away, because that, if you want something to feel bigger without having to try to turn it up and add things that ultimately could get in the way, you know, in the spatial side of things, take something away beforehand.
Yeah.
This last chorus feels more open and big because not only is dynamically does it come down, there's a little bit of back and forth, and there's a lot of stuff taken away. The guitars being the big one, because they're back in.
Rocking around the Christmas tree.
There, man, that's your mid-range energy all out there. And then, of course, you got the piano, you know, doing the Jerry Lee Lewis thing on the top. But space is so freaking important. It's such a useful tool when it comes to songwriting, period. But I also think, and I think Ernesto would probably agree with me on this, though I won't speak for him, that getting a good mix, great mix, whatever, something you really like is dependent almost entirely on the arrangement. Something that is arranged well, whether it be the flow of the overall song, the instrumentation chosen, that is going to make your mix really good or just okay, you know. And I'm not saying this is the greatest mix or anything ever, but I do think it's very interesting and it's inviting. And I think that's half the thing, is bringing people into something that's interesting. And sometimes turning things off is the best way to do that. In this case, we turned a lot of things off. So we have any questions over there? Let me go back over here to 7. Boom. How we doing, everybody? We doing, I can't look at that's the monitor right there. I got to look at you. How's everybody doing?
Yeah, well, we got the classic jokes. I demand less, more cowbell,
Yeah, but I had to ask for that. See, it's not really as, come on. Come on. What's that reference to?
MAN Network says, I've never mixed in Logic. It looks so foreign to me.
What's he mixing? Pro Tools? Personas?
Yeah, no, he's a PT. So I guess that's what he said.
That'll be my next big thing, is moving some of these sessions to do in Pro Tools to run the automation through all the beta testing there.
Yeah.
Doing it in the different DAWs.
Yeah, I know.
Personas
And then
will be
Sean says, it's like, I used Pro Tools for years, but the whole subscription and version limitations for not using Avid interfaces, blah blah blah. It kind of ticked him off. So.
Yeah, the rental thing, I'm just not.
Yeah, and he's in Reaper now. So.
Oh well, there you go.
So yeah, but like I just said in the chat, I think the whole subscription is gonna be the norm pretty soon, and there will be a few DAWs that won't have any. Apple doesn't because they
tied to the hardware.
Yep. So, but there's a lot of companies that just.
Reaper's not that way, is it?
Well, I mean. I think there's like a basic free version, but then you have to pay for.
But it's not a subscription.
No, not yet.
Yeah. So Personas is, you got both. It's I think $400 if you buy it outright, or it's $15 a month or something for the Sphere subscription. But if you buy it outright with them, you don't get everything. If you get the Sphere, you get everything. But there's things missing from the outright purchase one.
Yeah.
I think Logic is $300. I don't even know the.
No, Logic is $199.
What?
Logic is $199.
Tells you how long it's been since I bought it. Damn, that's a good price. That's really good. And the Pro Tools you can still buy a perpetual license.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know how it works if you didn't have it before. Right now, I think if you just go and buy right now, I don't know if you can get one. I think you just have to go.
I don't know, actually.
So subscription is the only way, I think. I don't know. Maybe I'm confusing it with Adobe, whatever.
So far, it's been Logic. I mean, I've been Logic since version 4.7. I am doing some testing with Personas right now, which has been interesting. There's some things I like and dislike, but it's really, really new. But there's so much even if I switch now, there's still so many things in Logic that would have to get done here. But this is so familiar to me. I mean, the organization of things and the overall look.
Yeah.
It's clean.
Well, I mean, in this case, I think the most essential thing is like, how does the DAW communicate with everything you have hooked up?
And that's a big thing. And I think with whatever workflows you ultimately decide, if you're completely in the box, it's a whole different thing. You don't have some of these worries. But for me, I know that I'm going to do the majority of my stuff outside the box. I have more fun doing it that way. And I think it sounds great, but also I just enjoy it. And I want to enjoy what I do, so this is the way I do it. I still do stuff inside the box some. But I know it's going to have to talk to my outboard effects over here via my MIDI timepiece. I know I'm syncing to this laptop over here. And I even have screen share. I'll show you right now. Real quick, flip
Which
over
one?
to 2. And this is how, we there? Okay, cool. Go picture in picture, if you would. Mm-hmm. So this is how I make my life easy so I don't have to get up and go stand over there, is I have screen sharing, the double dock.
Look at that.
And yes, it gets confusing sometimes. But all I have to do is flip over to screen sharing, and now I'm controlling the print laptop. So I can arm tracks, I can turn things on and off. These are mixes we printed last night. I sent home with Ernesto just to take a listen to. If I had a reference mix, let's say I was doing a mix for an artist that had already had a reference mix, I would load it into the print laptop session. And that way all I have to do is solo that, and I can go back in real time. Because although I'm not here, let me turn the sync on. Let me just show this real fast.
Yeah.
I got to turn audio MIDI on. This is a whole other nightmare. Yeah, so this is, I showed this a little bit last week. This is my MIDI timepiece and the connections to all of the outboard. And I can set that up in Logic. But right now I'm just going to connect to that MacBook Pro. Now over here. Oh, I got a problem. Houston.
Yeah, MAN Network says, I mix almost 100% analog and my Pro Tools can be a nightmare sometimes with latency compensation. Yeah, because you're going in and out of digital. So yeah, that's always an issue regardless of the DAW.
Yep. So now you can see this guy moving? It's in time with this.
Rockin'. Rockin'.
So if I had, let's say I had a reference mixer, let's say I'm doing a revision, and I can just, all I have to do is leave these muted and then hit solo as we're going in time, and everything is lined up, so I can go back and between my mix revisions or a reference mix or that sort of thing. And a lot of the times at the end of a mix, I'll print my own revisions if I have ideas with the outboard, like say the Rupert Neves. We might have the way that we all agreed on, we dug. We're like, cool, that's it. Okay, I'm going to go hit it really hard. Or I'm going to turn the different silks on if they did something I like. And I might print a couple different revisions on my own that might not even go to the client unless I go, ooh, that's interesting. And then I'll send that as well. And the way that I would hear that stuff is I would have my print and then I would just do the solo and I could hear the differences. And the reason why it's in that machine is so it's after all my print effects. It is not going through the chain. It is post everything. That way I know I'm getting
You want to show
apples
that?
to apples. Oh yeah, we got that over here too.
There you go.
There we go. So there's the print side. Alan Smart C1, pair of Rupert Neve 540 doses, and an SSL Ultraviolet, which was on sale for $500 this week. It may still be there.
Yeah.
For an Audio Sweetwater. I bought mine for $1,100?
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, guys. I'll make you a deal. I'll sell it to you for $900 because I think they're. So that's how I control that other machine when I'm doing my mixes ultimately, and it allows me to A/B other mixes, references, that sort of thing in real time. It also is how I make sure when I print my stems that everything lines up, and it works really, really well actually. And the setup in Logic isn't that hard. Here, while I'm here, I'll just show you. My phone's blowing up. Did the Chiefs win? What's going on, man?
Let me switch over.
Minute 44 left in the game. Are we winning?
All right, let me switch back over.
That's how important I think this music is. I'm not even watching the Chiefs game. Yeah, go back over here. So to set this up, MIDI, got the sync. So this is the computer that is sending code. So I have transmit MIDI timecode, and I pick the network it's going out. So the automation is coming in on these IP MIDI. This is my 4 banks, bank 1 through 8, 9 through 16, 17 to 24, 25 to 32. This network print MacBook should be print MacBook right there. That's the network that is connected to the other computer. And that's all I have to do for this computer to send out. Right? So now we're sending. So we go over here to this guy. Well, here I can do the short way. And in this computer, sync mode I set to MTC, so it's looking for MIDI timecode. It's going to see that coming in. As long as this is on, you see that what is this thing called?
The song position locator.
The song position the SPL.
Yeah.
Sound pressure level. Oh,
yeah. Well,
the SPL is blue. That's how I know that it's turned on. So I can see it. Now, the frame rate, this doesn't really matter for this because we're not doing a video. These old sessions back in mid-2000s, I didn't know. And I don't know if you did. Maybe you did. I didn't. It's just whatever Logic started with. In this case, it was 25. Now, when we do all this video, we set everything to match everything because there can be issues. In that stuff that is somehow printed in because we have changed that after the fact to match cameras and had bad drift issues. So now we're very on it, but these were all at 25, so I just left it that way. So when I go now to this, so I'm here, I'll go to the top. What I would do is I hit R to arm that track, and I don't even have to switch back over to the other one. I can just do it right here off the Behringer, I hit play, and you can see we're recording. Boom. Print in the mix. I stop the Behringer, which is stopping the actual session, and it stops in this computer as well. And that's at the end of every mix.
Yeah.
That's how we do it.
And that's the convenience of having a separate print computer that only communicates via Ethernet, so you don't have digital driver issues, because that's always the big problem when you have more than one interface, let's say from different brands or whatever, that try to talk to each other, especially when one is like 10 years older.
Yeah, but before the MacBook went in over there, you want to flip back to 7 and pull the PP. Before that went in there, we had the Motus and the Apogee hooked up to this machine and had an aggregate device that was used only when mixing. It was really, really problematic. One, the latency was ridiculous. And if I wanted to print anything while I was mixing, I'd have to turn all that stuff off, and it was a nightmare. So that end of things freed some resources up and made the workflow a lot faster. The other thing is, this rarely drops. Last week, it dropped a few times. We figured that out, and I probably should have mentioned this too. Last week, these old sessions, we had them in 96. This week, yesterday, I converted this entire session to 48. So these are both linked up at 48. There's no connection issues. It doesn't drop. None of the things that were happening last week. We determined, and I don't quite know why this is, because I don't think it should be an issue, that even though both were set at 96, that computer kept dropping with the connection, so it'd have to reboot the core audio if you saw that stream last week. But it would print. But when we printed a mix on playback, I sent him a mix to master, and all of a sudden in the middle it slowed down and then started to speed up and it went like this, and then it would be right. Really weird. It
was a roller coaster of sample rates.
So we figured out setting the other one to 48 and leaving this one at 96. Well, first off, both at 96. When we printed, it actually looked like it printed correctly, and then it cut the time in half. And I put it really fast, like this, it was going really quick. We're like, whoa. So we set the other one to 48, left this one at 96. It printed right, but then it did that random speed up, slow down. And although the connection is via MIDI timecode, via the Ethernet cable, for whatever reason, it did not like it. I don't know if it was because it was Moto on one end, Apogee on the other. Don't know if it's literally wouldn't make any difference what the brand was, and it's just simply syncing with these old machines. Don't know. But once we converted this one back to 48, and now they're both running 48, no problems whatsoever. So last week was a rare thing that we figured out had to do, most likely with something with 96. These are old IOs units, so it could be something with that as well. But usually it's rock solid. I don't have any issues. Well, while I'm here, we got any questions first off? What we missed?
No,
anything?
I mean, people are just, they talked a lot about the sale of the ultraviolet.
Oh man, yes.
And then they're just, now they're talking about the M1 Mac. You know, it's cool because MAN network is on PC, and it says, I need to switch over to Mac. And it's like, well, you know, and then the separate print thing is cool. So yeah, I mean, they're just reacting to everything we're telling you guys.
Okay, good. I haven't missed anything then. So that's our setup here in a nutshell. I mean, it's deeper than that overall. I'd say the biggest thing, and it's time for another patch bay video, is everything goes over to the patch bay. I mean, that is literally the central nervous system of everything, including the print laptop comes back out.
Yeah.
All the way the 2-track is, like the print chain, that graphic I showed you, that is actually can you flip back over
let's
that
go
one
back
time?
to that.
Because I need, so we'll go to 3.
Yeah, let me go to full screen. There we go.
Okay, cool. So this setup right here is a mirror of what's in the patch bay. So literally the output of the master fader feeds the input of the M1, or say M1, I got M1 on my mind, of the C1. That goes through those 3 pieces of gear there. The C1 542 ultraviolet comes out of there directly to the top of the next patch bay, which goes into the Apogee, and then it feeds down into the laptop. You know, it's Wait, I said that wrong. But that's how it feeds. So it's top, bottom in the patch bay automatically. No patching whatsoever at all. And coming out of the apogee, it comes out, and on the bottom row, which is the input, is the 2-track. It's automatically fed right to that with no patching at all. So it's hardwired. However, for this live stream, and I don't have a photo of this nor a way to really show you because it's covered up with a bunch of patch cables. We have 2 molts in one of the patch bays, Molt A and Molt B, that we can molt a signal to 3 different places. 3 different A's, 3 different B's. To get the signal of this mix going to the 2-track as well as going over to the video machine, I'm running the output of the apogee. I'm patching that into the molt. I'm taking an output of the molt into left and right of the 2-track and another output of the molt into the left and right of the Black Magic. And that's how we're splitting this feed right now. If this was a normal mix, I wouldn't have to patch anything. Literally all I have to do is, as long as something is going out this master output, it's going over to the print chain. All right, we can go back out of that. I just wanted to see my graphics again. 'Cause I cut that laptop out, man. That's the actual print laptop, man. I spent hours.
Wait.
She's won, first off, so we're having a good day.
Wade says, you guys explain things so well. You give drum lessons. And then MN Network says, he did 20 years at MI. I think he's done with lessons.
What he just said. However, I can recommend some good teachers to you.
Oh, that's great, you guys.
Oh, that's awesome. So is there anything... I mean, that's the mix. We've had fun redoing these old songs to try to make them sound even better. It's been... And get some use out of them because the original mixes were not good. All the songs from the studio stuff, which we have a 5th song in the works. We're just trying to get the vocals done before the end of the year to hopefully get out. It's going to be a cool one. Steve DeLuca's coming back with us. Jingle Bell Rock should be up soon on all the streaming platforms. There is a Songs from the Studio Bandcamp page. All of the first 4 songs are up there. Jingle Bell Rock is up there. This one will be up once he gets done mastering it. He being Ernesto. Then everything will be out. I'll get links up on all the YouTube videos as well. We do have one more live stream planned for the weekend of is it the 10th? Let me double check. It is. Yeah, it'll either be the 10th or 11th. We'll have one last live stream of the year. I can't do one next week because I'm mixing all week. I'm mixing an album, some death metal, some crazy. Necronomicon Ex Mortis. Looking forward to that. Great players. So that's my next week. So I'll be out. But the following weekend, we're going to do one more. We're going to do some recording again, right? We're going to finish out the year with doing some recording. Mm-hmm. So we'll get a list of mics up to vote on. We'll give it a twist somehow. I don't know. We'll figure out to have a little bit of fun. So anything else?
Not really. I mean, just it's kind of cool how everybody just told their stories about wiring and even MN Network says I spent 2 weeks adding more and rewiring my patch base.
Well, when I redid this in March, so the console went in the last day of last year, right? Picked it up when I got back in town. That got dropped in, but the 8 channels didn't get hooked up until March. And I had Anthrax in for 3 days, recording some pre-pro for them. Their new album's going to be rad, by the way. There's some really cool stuff. The night they left, I tore everything out, which you can go see the video of that. It's on the YouTube channel. But I thought, I had mixing scheduled for, I think, with Sammy Watson. His album is out. Sammy Watson, fantastic drummer. It was fun working with him. Go check his album out, too, Kaleidoscopes. It came out really good. I had mixes with him scheduled for 6 days later, thinking, okay, you know what? This is already in. The neighbors across the street already had these built, so they dropped in the first thing on Thursday. So I had pretty much everything ripped out, ready to go. I'm thinking, I'm going to put it in. I had drawn up lists of where everything was going to drop in. I can add these other 8 channels and cut the things to length. 6 days, no problem. I did 14, 15-hour days. Had to postpone mixing with Sammy for a week. Ernesto was smart. He left town. He said, screw you, I'm out of here. He went South America way. What is it, Portugal? See if anybody knows that reference. I know where Portugal is, people. It's a reference to a TV show. But I thought, I had it planned out. I mean, I had everything bought. It was all here already. I wasn't waiting on anything. I had my list of where the stuff was going to go. I even had my soldering station set up. I mean, I was as planned as you could be. And I got 3 days into that and went, what is wrong with me? How did I think that 6 days? And even after 2 weeks of it, there were still a few things that I didn't get to finish 100% the way I wanted it. We'll see if I get there again. Right now, it all works. So I feel your pain if you're out there doing rewiring. I feel your pain. Is our audio holding up?
Yeah.
So
I
far,
mean,
so good?
yeah, so far.
Okay, good.
Yep, excellent.
Good.
And yeah, so I guess that's it because, some people are...
I'm hungry.
Somebody asked Anthrax, some metal. It's like, no, I mean, you kind of said it, right?
Yeah, Anthrax the band.
Yeah, no, but because you said you're going to do some metal mixing.
Oh, no. Anthrax was in March. I've done a couple different sessions with them. March, and we did one last month. They came in for 3 days at a time doing pre-pro recordings for their next album. Those guys rule. It's a lot of fun. But coming up this weekend, I'm mixing, it's a death metal band from Boston and Chicago called Necronomicon Ex Mortis. Great drummer on this, great guitar players. It's going to be, it's prog death metal and a little bit of melodic death metal in there as well. It's really good players though. I think all Berkeley guys, so it's a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to that. And I'm going to put that plug-in to good use, that Sonics leveler. The thing is fantastic. So
cool.
That's all I've got. Do have a couple new sample libraries that are up on the Ultimate Studio Inc. store. I think there's a link in the description. They're all one-shots from actual sessions. I have 4 more in the works that I think are cool that I'm going to try to get one done each month and put them out. They come with some cymbals, one-shots of the kick, snare, toms. There's dry versions with natural, with overheads, big, with rooms, and then there's all the raw files that you can do whatever the hell you want with them. There's presets for Logic, presets for battery, presets for slate trigger, and that's it at the moment, which is a lot.
Yeah.
At least for me putting it together. There'll be more in the future as I get into it. So that's where we're at. Go check that stuff out. It's $9.99 a pack. They're cheap. That's it. That's all I got.
Yep.
That's my sales pitch. They sound good, I think. They sound interesting. And that, not good, interesting. Good and boring, quite often the same thing.
Oh, yeah. So Alex says, just saying how cool it is to record them. Charlie Benante is somehow well-known and criminally underrated. Oh yeah.
He is ridiculously easy to record. And for the record, we're just doing pre-pro. So when they walk in, I talk with the management guys and back and forth with Charlie beforehand. It's literally ready for them. Like Charlie sits down, and the first time we did it, I had Casper's help, and we looked at photos of his rig that he was using, and we set up a kit because he just comes in and uses my gear. He doesn't bring anything. He flies in from Chicago, I think, and comes in. So we actually went and saw photos of the gear. We tried to set it up as close as possible with the cymbals, the whole 9 yards. So he comes in, makes a couple tweaks, and he's playing. There's no sound check. There's no line check. I have bass set up, so Frank comes in, the same thing. He just plugs into what's here. He brings his Tech 21 pedal. We plug in. We start going. I already have headphone mixes out there, but they're live in the room. So the bass amp is live, guitar amp is live. Scott brings a 5150 rig. We put a Unidyne on it, and literally it's off and running. There is no, let's see what it sounds like. None of that stuff. It's pre-pro. So I sound check as much as I can beforehand. But Charlie is so consistent when he's playing all the blast beat stuff, and he's doing some blast beats, when he's doing the double bass stuff. And it's so, for me, it's a bit of a kid in the candy store thing, because I grew up on, Among the Living was one of my favorite all-time records as a kid, and still is. State of Euphoria, all of that stuff. So me going like this and looking out through the window and, holy crap, and then hearing that and watching that right there, his sounds around the kit, he should be studied for any metal drummer because it's powerful. One, even when he's playing fast, it's got power behind it, but he hits so dead on the kit. Same with the kick drums. And he's using my double pedal. I think it's the Pearl, because I don't even think I have a linkage for my double pedal for the TAM. I need to order one. So he uses an eliminator that I've had since 2001. It's literally the first pedal I got when I was a Pearl artist back in the day. And he doesn't say a word, doesn't sits down and starts playing and going. And then we set up for him, because he writes a lot of the riffs, or most of them. We have a rig set up next to him, and I have the Ernesto's Framus guitar. So in between, he sits down there and plays guitar, and he's really good. Scott comes in with his 5150 rig, which sounds amazing. I mean, and he's talk about riffage, man. Hetfield who? No, I didn't say that. Hetfield's awesome. It's one of my favorites. But Scott, same thing. You know, and a lot of fun. And Frank is just, that's the core guys. And they're right and they do their thing. And my job is 100% to capture that, to not get in the way, to make it sound good enough, as humanly fast as possible. And as soon as they start working out parts, I'm hitting record. The first time I missed one time, they're like, you got that right? And I was like, oh, computer problem. I blame the computer. I didn't. I took responsibility. So now it's get it up fast, 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 fast. Okay, it sounds good enough. They're already working. I'm hitting record. I'll still tweak things if I need to, but it's get in, get things in, get them going, and then I need to be almost invisible. They ask questions for me. I go out and I fix things, move things, whatever. And it's just fun. They're actually really cool guys. Their management, everybody's a blast. They're working with Jay Rustin again, who's awesome. So it's going to be some cool stuff, I think, once they get in and do it. Charlie's getting ready to, I think it's his birthday today or yesterday, actually.
I don't know.
And then he's out doing Pantera, which is going to be freaking awesome. I think he's the right choice for the drummer to pay homage right there. He's the perfect choice. So, yeah, those guys are cool. It's fun. I cannot wait to hear. I'm going to talk to Jay to see whenever they go do the real thing. I'm going to say, you know.
Yeah, Alex says Sound of White Noise is his favorite.
That's a great album, too. I mean, all of them are actually really good. But Sound of White Noise was cool.
Yeah.
Really cool.
Yeah, what I noticed...
But Among the Living for me is just...
Among the Living on the original recording, right? The original CD that they put out. When I looked at iTunes, you know how you could check the loudness level?
Yep.
Among the Living was actually below minus 14 or whatever, you know?
Wow.
Everything else was like +7, +8, you know? It was like Anthrax was actually like -1 or something.
Wow.
So in terms of loudness, it was pretty dead on for analog, you know?
I just love that album. The songwriting is great. It's cool.
Yeah.
It's just really cool.
All right, cool.
All right.
That's all we got.
I've got. We had fun. I hope you guys have enjoyed these. We appreciate you joining us on all this. We are going to try to do more of this stuff in the new year. There's actually multiple plans that are moving forward for the new year. There's a lot of work to do on them, but I want to do some more of these kind of mix-ish breakdown kind of things, talking about arranging as well, because it's important. We have more songs from the studio coming. The 10th or 11th, I'll get the link up soon. We're going to do one final live stream for the year. It's going to be some recording. We're going to have some fun. And yeah, that's all. That's it. So
cool.
I'm going to shut the hell up now because it's time to go to Chipotle. And we'll see you guys later. You want to take us out? Here, wait, hold on. Let's play us out. Wait. Let's go to the guitar solo.
There's clicks.
Guitar solo.
No, there's clicks.